different this is from ASAP. But again, this is a PPP model. Next. Now, ADB is introducing the model of lending which allows us to facilitate engagement in a PP model. So we have gone in for result-based. So as private and public sector, you're both party to ensuring that the result comes. And so the disbursement-linked indicators for the ADB loans in India, which is something new and the Department of Economic Affairs is very interested in seeing the outcome, is that unless you collaborate as private and public sector in a training scheme, in a skilling scheme, the money is not going to be released. Next. So I am actually speaking after two very illustrious speakers. So I just want to say that, look, I didn't ask them, but you can see the challenges that I have put are exactly what Dilip and Murli have been talking. And so these are really, the public and private, they approach a relationship from two different doors. And so all I want to say is that there needs to be mega communication. There needs to be ability to innovate, to break rules, to bend rules, and to say that what has not been tried before can also work. Right? So please just click once. Once more. Thank you. It is extremely important for the public sector people to do the 5 things that I've put over there. And I think the most important is that they must focus on success. They must focus on success. So, the traditional mindset is I am sitting behind doors and there's going to be an orderly outside and you're going to give your card and then I'm going to meet. Payments may get delayed by 15 months. I don't care. That's not going to work in the system. And we are already seeing government schemes which are undersubscribed. And you can keep saying, I don't care, but at some point you will be accountable. So that's the point I want to put here. In the private sector, I want to say 2 things. Where is the money? Why aren't people thinking of a 50 crore and 100 crore turnover? Everybody is on a 2.5 crore turnover. That is not going to work in this country. So, for example, in Kerala, we are not finding training providers coming because you don't have bandwidth. So you do a year and then you move out from there. Meghalaya, we are wanting to do skilling there. The people are not coming because you don't have bandwidth. So there is this crescent between Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, and hum to yahi operate karenge. So that's the mindset. So boss, build your capacity is the first thing for the private sector. Look at skills. It's as big as education, if not bigger. That's the first point. And the second point is your tail has to be with the employers. I think this point has been flogged enough. Using the sector skill councils, the time has come. Of course, I can only see one sector skill council, Ramesh, here. Sector skill councils and the private sector training providers have to come together to fulfill what Dilip has been saying. And that is, you have got to demonstrate to the government that you are able to absorb the people that you're training. Otherwise, this model is not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Basam. I think one question with Dilip, and also it's coming out clearly, is that who's going to pay for the training? Even the PPP model which he talked about, the total quantum of training fee will come down because something comes from the government. But I think in the very quick question which Narasimha Rao, I think we're going to ask him to speak next, he will probably talk about the employer side, how the employer must pay, not because of the funding issue, but more because they have to take ownership for what they produce. So Narasimha Rao.
Yeah, co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm neither going to give you any funds, nor I'm providing training. I'm from the industry. We are a 100 crore company with 280 employees. We are a Swiss headquartered company. I would share with you one experience on, we adopted IT at Shirur, which is further up from our company, 10 kilometers. Our experience there, because that's one of the PPP model, and what are the challenges I will share. And also we are now the Swiss companies in Pune. We have 22 factories. We are coming together to set up an institute which we'll call the Center of Excellence. We have two segments there. One is for manufacturing, which we are going to adopt the exactly Swiss model, a 4-year course with 2 years in the industry, 2 years in the school, 2 years in the industry. I'll talk about it a little later. First, let me show quickly our experience with this ITS Shirur. No, I think there's one before. No, you come at the end. Yeah. Okay, we adopted this institute in 2007. Actually, prior to we got involved, this ITS Shirur was existing. The place Shirur is actually not the place where it is today. And that time they had 48 students with 3 trades and rented premises for 10 years. So after we got involved, we applied for this Prime Minister's scheme with, we did a complete survey of the industrial requirements, what are the trades required. We made a plan, IDP, and then we got 2.5 crores. To our surprise, it went very, very efficient, very quick. I mean, we never expected that so well. We built a greenfield campus. There was a land we got from the MIDC. And from there, we have now grown to 184 students in 7 trades over 4 years. What we have done well is we got alignment of courses for industry requirements. We got facilities which are industry, like painting. A typical ITI trade in painting was teaching somebody to draw, number plates kind of thing. Whereas we have got powder coating, spray painting. We got industry kind of require, like welding. We have MIG and TIG welding. And the good thing also, the industry involvement. We are fortunately in MIDC, so we have got like Fiat and Tata Motors donated 60 lakhs to set up a motor mechanics workshop. All the vehicles and engines and all they gave. A lot of people contributed. We have done on-the-job training in the companies. We have done soft skill training, production-oriented scaling, faculty training. That's a big challenge. And with this, we have so far 100% pass out, 100% placement record. We got an appreciation from the Director of General of Education Training, Maharashtra, and Bombay Merchant Chamber for one of the best institutes in Western India under this PPP model in 2012. Next slide, please. These are the pictures you can see where we made a foundation stone and where now the campus looks, Next slide. These are the facilities, the motor mechanic workshop, computer lab. We have online, internet-based education. We have CD, computer-based training system. You can see the painting, hostel. Next slide. We also involve the Swiss instructors to train the apprentices and the trainers. You can see on the right top in the industry, they were, industry-based working, training on the industry, soft skills. So it was working quite well. What I can say, the industry involvement is very good, and we could do a lot. Next slide, please. But where we are stuck after that, after 5 years, is that we had earlier a principal who was very passionate. In fact, he pulled us into the scheme. When he first came to me, I said, we are too small to adopt an ITI. We are not the right guys. But he said, no, we want Burkhardt to do this. And the joint director in Pune, the director of technical education in Mumbai, the secretary, everybody was supporting. And now all the 4 have changed. And now we see no enthusiasm at all from anybody. And we do not have any involvement on the HR aspects of the ITI, whether it's recruitments, appraisals, transfers. Suddenly people are transferred, we don't even know, and then we are running, it's like you're driving a car, somebody shifting the gear, you don't know where you're heading. There are no incentives for better performing officials. If somebody done so well with the PPP model, then they should get something, a better posting of a promotion or something, then they get this. There's no such incentive. The PPP is an industry project here. we have a huge delays in, we have wanted to go to 450 students, and that project is pending for last 3 years. We don't have approval for the courses, faculty positions. And we also have to go through government civil work department. The building is leaking. This is not a kind of institute we want to build from industry, and we have the money also from IMC. Same with the equipment, we can only buy from approved vendors. And the big challenge, I think all of you know, is the shortage of teachers, itself, and the quality is really poor in teachers and instructors. Actually, we did a workshop 2 years ago. We took one instructor from every government ITF in Pune district, so 60 of them, and we got 10 from Pune. We did a 3-day workshop with 2 Swiss instructors on the teaching methodology. How do you bring teamwork? How do you bring innovation? How do you, use projects as an example for theory? It was so well because that time secretary was fully monitoring it, and this time we called the same people back. Nobody is ready to, they were sending new people, so we said forget it. So the problem here, I thought some government people will be here to take note of it. If we are giving little more involvement on the HR side, a lot can be done. Next slide, please. These are my suggestions for the success. One idea could be, instead of joint running by 2 drivers, probably government can rent out facilities, and in the private sector can manage. Even one shift can be managed by like IMC. Probably we can do much better, and the facilities are there. We need to build a role model institute. I was just talking to Murli before we came here. I said Pandit Nehru built IITs, IIMs, AIMS. Now every state wants to have one of them, but we don't have a vocational education that everybody wants, because there is no such institute, of very aspirational level. We were in Brazil. Mr. Chena was also there. I was in Sao Paulo to witness the World Skills. They have this school set up by the industry association called Senai, and everybody would love to go there, given a choice. It's like our IITs. Industry should invest in skilling. This is what I believe, because I feel that in Switzerland, the skilling was done by industry. Then the government came much later with the standards and quality and all that. It's the same in Germany. I see the same in Brazil. The example I heard from the Swiss people is industry is like institute is like a factory. And the apprentice is like a raw material. You convert him into product. But whom do you sell the product? Is the industry. If you don't have a customer and you only produce a product, you are reaching the dead end. All the stories I hear are like this, because there's nobody who is actually asking. There has to be pull. And the pull has to come from the industry. Then they will demand quality. Then they are ready to pay premium for it. So one suggestion I have, and I gave to Mr. Chenoy already in June, this idea. I'm still passionate on this topic. Like we have cost of poor quality, we should somehow compute cost of poor skilling for the industry, and then use this to sell. Whether rework salvaging, rejections, cost of training, loss of business reputation, and more important, inability to move up the value chain. If we have to make India as not just make in India, but a nation of manufacturing excellence like Switzerland is, we have to move up the skill. When I went to Switzerland in 86, Swiss franc was 7.5 rupees. Today it is nearly 70. And still they are competitive. Another thing I want to suggest is the CSR should be allowed for apprentice training. The employee training is not covered, but this is something I'm not sure. If we are not recruiting, or whether we are recruiting fresh apprentices, the CSR should be allowed, so that this 2% money can be easily used for training. And this can be big pull. Other thing I want to share for the trainers, this thing we said about scalability, I saw something, next slide I show in the Brazil. I think in India we should look at that. Next slide. They have these trailers, workshops on trailers, and then they take it to various locations, and then they give the practical. So because assets in manufacturing is so costly, we should look at it. One trailer can serve 6 ITIs, 1 day a week. It can be a good idea. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm last in the list.
Still have 7 minutes, John. No problem.
Sure, last in the group, and sort of it's always difficult to go last, because everything has already been said by people, but not everything has been said by everybody. So I'm the everybody in this case. I'll in the effort kind of not to repeat, and I agree with everything that's been said. I'll just try to, make a few points in the context of some of the work that the World Bank has been doing. I've been very fortunate to be in India for the past over 6 years, so I've seen a lot of changes in the skilling space. In the 6, 7, 8 years ago, the focus was still very, very much on the old ITI model, a very supply-side driven model. As you've heard all of the speakers, there has been a huge shift towards private sector involvement, both in terms of identifying the demand, identifying the curriculum, and actually being involved in the training, as Dilip said with respect to the development of NSDC. In terms of the work that we've been doing, it's really kind of a couple of areas. And I'm sorry I didn't bring slides. That's very unlike somebody from the World Bank, but I'll just talk. That's okay. A couple of areas. One has been more in the analytic realm of conducting studies. In fact, we've recently conducted a couple of pieces of work. We did a 5-state study of some of the existing national skills training programs. We've also done some more detailed work at the state level in 5 states, looking at what models might work in terms of skilling. And then finally, we've done some sort of much farther removed analytic work where we're using the enterprise survey, which is a survey that the World Bank supports. It was actually just recently completed in India, and we went back and we surveyed firms that were in that conducted in that survey in the textile area and the automotive area to get a sort of a drill down of what is happening in these spaces. And just like to make a couple points on that, and then talk a little bit about what we've been doing. I think one of the big issues that we've discovered is that a lot of the training programs that were out there actually have positive effects. They have positive impacts both on the skills that are produced and on the wages that are eventually commanded by those that undertake the skilling. So there is some positive benefit that's out there. But that positive benefit comes with a lot of churning of individuals. These individuals don't necessarily stay in the same industries. They move around a lot, and they don't necessarily get jobs in the sectors for which they were trained. Right? So there's a sense in which the training is very general and maybe less sector specific. Second area that we found was that many of the training programs, and that there are like 17 different ministries that had been conducting skill training, they are often gravitating to the extent that they use a PPP model. They're using the same training providers. They're using the same kind of models. So you end up, when you interview, when you go and you ask even a training provider, well, have you provided a skills training program under such and such program? Many times they don't even know. They say, yeah, it's some government program we're supporting through training, right? Now, part of that has to do with the profitability model that has to be followed. But also there's a sense of, I would say, more than a small degree of overlap in how training is conducted. And that's something that comes out of the research. A third point on this, which was kind of revealed from these subsector studies that we've been looking at, and the two that I just highlighted was the automotive sector, which is a little more, not the big car manufacturing, but automotive parts, which is a little more capital intensive, perhaps a little more skill intensive, and then textile, which is more labor intensive. And what we really found was that a lot of the firms, particularly small firms, have a very difficult time in articulating what skills they're looking for. What do they really need? What do you mean by skills? Do you mean precise technical skills? Do you mean more basic literacy and numeracy that allows you to be trained? What exactly are you referring to? So one of the points that comes out is to be a little careful about defining what kinds of skills we're talking about for what kinds of populations. And that played itself out in the sense that we really think there's kind of two different questions. One question you could ask is, well, am I having trouble getting skilled workers, period? And usually the answer to that question is yes. Of course I would, as an employer, I would like more skilled workers. But if you ask the question, can I get skilled workers? Am I having trouble getting them at wages that I'm willing to pay? That's a very different question, right? It's a very different question. And the answer oftentimes is no. I'm not having problems because the structure of some of the industries, particularly very small firms in very, very, very competitive circumstances, they really are in kind of a low productivity equilibrium situation. Low wage, low productivity. They have factored in the idea of high turnover. So therefore, for them, it's really not a good proposition to say, I want to invest in a lot of training. I can train a worker sort of on the shop floor with a more experienced person for 2 days, and we're ready to go. So the proposition of training is more challenging. So I think there is a role when we talk about training. I mean, clearly it is the case that we need a very, very close partnership between industries and government to take this forward. There is in some sense, market failure for training, particularly at low skill settings. So that there is definitely a role. I'll just conclude by saying that what we are working toward, or the kind of model that we are kind of thinking more about, is almost a framework of steps for skills, which start out really almost at the beginning of the life cycle. I mean, it really kind of starts out with nutrition, making sure that they're good learners who are ready to get formal education, because those individuals are the ones who are most trainable, right, as you move forward. So if you think about it, so how do we enhance productivity? That's a degree that we're kind of moving in. And I know there was a colleague that said 10 is the new 8, in the sense that 8th pass is really no longer sufficient for almost any job. Almost all the employers we interviewed aren't even considering such people. So really we're looking at higher level cognitive skills, and that needs to be featured into the training that we undertake. Last point I'll make, we as the World Bank, we're engaging with the new Ministry of Skills in a number of areas, and we're looking at trying to support the National Skills Mission in different ways. Like ADB, we also have some engagement in states, and like ADB also, we are using, he used the phrase disbursement-linked indicators, which is the flavor of the day now, to try to enhance performance, in a way, performance payments. So these things are all being followed. And just to conclude, what everyone else said is exactly the case. When you're looking at government, increasingly, that partnership with industry has to be there. And we are looking at more of a regulatory role, standards-based role, and being less involved in the day-to-day training, which is left up to you in terms of the employers and the training providers. So let me stop there. Thanks.
"25 minutes we have, so we'll have questions. I think that's what I promised. Who would like to go first? Yes, sir.
Sir. Yeah.
Can you make it brief, because we want more questions from Mary's audience? One question per person. Brief question, please.
Yeah. Maybe I have two questions, but I'll take it after one.
Yeah.
One is related with the Sector Skill Council, which is there happening. We have been into two Sector Skill Council, ASDC and others also. One of the challenges which we face along with for the employment is if a student has passed the level 4 certification and he goes for a job, the company demands for a diploma or a degree. So if an SSC pass, if he goes for a level 4 certification, which is I think so the supervisory skill, doesn't get a job. I don't know what is the issue, but even the service stations in Bombay does not know about them.
Question addressed to Dilip?
I don't know where we can.
Okay.
So I'm just talking from respect. This is just for automobiles, so I'm not looking at the others also.
Yeah, so the actual level 4 is a diploma level because level 7 is graduate. Now, the problem is the NSQF has been announced by the government, right? And we are populating it. It's just, NSQF has just been populated. I think we have to go out and educate people. That level 4 is diploma and level 5 is advanced diploma. Actually, level 5 and 6 and 7 will actually, when they come in, then the equivalence will be there. So I think we have to, there's a huge program of education that needs to be done.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So I am from state of Telangana, newly formed, and from three-tier cities, that is Warangal district, where is NIT is there. And as per your NSDC analysis, there is a demand for more than lakh skilled people. But still now, there is no skill center. So we are coming forward to set up a skill center. So what kind of support we are going to get from the NSDC and what kind of guidance we are going to get it. And one more thing is, in Telangana state, after 10 plus, there is no fee charge. Everything is sponsored by government for regular courses. But when coming to skill, and what is the point of, who is going to pay the fees? Because there, the state is different. Students are not going to pay any kind of fees. So how we can interact
I think
with
the first part of the question about what NSDC can do for you, we'll take it offline.
Yeah.
Because the topic is on PPP. We can take it offline. But I think the second question is who's going to pay the fee when the government sets the norm for the other courses at zero cost, which is free training. That's a good question. I think that's the question any of you like to answer.
I want to answer that question. This is a question which a lot of training providers throw at NSDC. And there are government schools and public schools. Both give CBSE exam. Both train the same people. Government schools are free, public schools charge a fee. How come public schools get students and they survive? So
We'll come back, sir. We'll have a conversation.
No, I'm open to a debate. I am absolutely open to a debate on this. In Gadchiroli, side by side, there is a training organization. Gadchiroli, by the way, is a Naxal-infected area, if you don't know. There are private sector training organizations, some sitting in the same line as you are, who have a waiting list. People are willing to pay. And there are government-funded training institutions which are offering the same thing for free that nobody is willing to go into. So if training providers create a brand equity, and if you go and actually train according to the needs of the employer and service the needs of the employer, right, you can actually get people to pay for it because they are interested in a job at the end of it. So you have to see, the challenge is that you have to identify what is the aspirational job and wage level that a person wants to get and identify the person who's willing to give him that job and that wage and train to that. The problem is that the model that we follow is we hope to train people according to the standards we believe that we are setting and then put them out in the market and hold a job fair. And when no one wants to employ them, then the next batch doesn't want to pay your fees. So if we change our own model in the private sector training institution, and the losses and QPs are only an indicator for you to this is what the standard that you're doing. You've been seeing the World Skills winners being facilitated. Each person there has got a 65,000 to a 70,000 rupee job offer, including the bricklayer, a month. Because people want productivity and skills and they're willing to pay for it. And now you have a government loan program for skills that they're willing to give loans to people for 5,000-10,000 rupees to learn skills, and that is there. So, if you want to flip the PPP model, which the army does, the army has excellent PPP model. They say, you go anywhere to a private sector training organization in your last year of service, you get trained, you get a job. 1 year after you've been the job, we'll reimburse the training fees for you.
But what I am saying, Telangana state, even for private institutions, government is reimbursement. So that is a process in Andhra Pradesh.
So can I rephrase that question, Dilip? Yeah, I think this question.
I'll just answer the question.
Yeah.
Let me answer the question. You know, I have now Telangana Jagrati Samiti,
Yeah.
okay, which is chaired by the daughter of the Chief Minister,
Kavita ma'am.
setting up 17 for-profit skill development centers in the state and coming to us for funding. I rest my case.
No, I will only add something, sir. The answer to the question, who will pay, cannot be given by Dilip or anybody in this panel. It has to come from your consumer. There are only two consumers, either the employer or the candidate. The question is, what can I do to make him pay? The differential. There are cases for differential. The amounts are not large. You're not asking 50,000 rupees for your skill development program or 1 lakh rupees. The question is, we need to make a case. Sometimes it takes some time to make a case because nobody will buy your story that I'm better than somebody else. So you have to run a few batches to demonstrate the differentiation. But the answer has to come from you, cannot come from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. The point Dilip had mentioned, comparing schools with skilled schools, I think it's misplaced. I would rather say that schooling is very, very, very much part of the system, much more. If a skilled person, despite the 65, 70,000 which is being offered, I thought that was a great initiative. And the societal level, there is no real dignity for him. And that is a much bigger challenge we face. We are running an AIV, vocational training center, where the jobs are available for welders, plumbers, etc. Tribal students refuse to go for that. They want to only sit at laptops or computers. That's a much bigger problem. And having been part of the school space, joining a public school is a lot different. And these two, I would rather say, cannot be compared, at least at the present level.
No, I think we will rest that case for the time being. But the point I was making is the same point I made earlier.
It's a different point, Murli.
Yeah.
The point that you're making is very interesting. You see, what we found is that sometimes we go and look for things where the light is. Okay. Now, what we have found is that you have to study the employer demographics. If you look at the tribal belt in which you are, you identify to which cities or which towns or which other areas in the country the people from that tribal belt are migrating for employment. If they are not, then you have a challenge.
Yeah.
But if they are, then if you want to train them and place them in the jobs where the migration is, you'll actually get a greater thing of success.
Fair.
The second thing is that if you're looking at tribal people or people who are in individual areas, if you train groups of 5 and 10 and 20 and move them in groups to fresh locations, handhold them and give them post-training and post-joining support, then your success rates will be much higher. So, you have to actually work out the model, and this is what you're actually seeing happening because they're not used to it.
No, that's fundamentally the model we are following. But my limited point was schooling
accept that.
formal and the skill part will become a
No,
lot
I think that point has been made. We
There's
accept
one
it,
more
sir.
point, sir. One
Yeah.
more, just short point. Despite training them very well, still, even the best of industry is not prepared to pay them the kind of money they at least reasonably look for, stating that we are in a low-cost model, we won't get, whether it's McDonald's or Coca-Cola. You would have read the Outlook article yourself, wherein they are saying, buddy, we are here because India is low cost. We do not want to pay this much money to the trained worker. That's a challenge which we face on a very regular basis. They start off with some money and after that, they are not able to sustain that.
Sir, I think the answer to this question is the same. 2 points. One, we run an employer paid model where employer, I told you, pays for recruiting fee and a training fee, 100%. No subsidy. The point is, it takes a longer time. It has taken 18 months to close one customer. We have made some 12 presentations across the board. But the point is, do we have sustainability, capability to wait that long? Right? And how much is going to be the cost of acquiring such a customer? So I think there is no answers which we can find in the panel. This is what I'm trying to tell you. If you are a businessman, the first thing you realize what works and what doesn't work is contextual, is based on what you want to do. And what anybody, which I'm asking in this panel is, how can we support such an entrepreneur like you? You have a problem. You want to do something good for society. You're taking a lot of initiative. You're struggling to make the ends meet. What can the government can do? What can be the facilitator role they can do? For example, one of the ideas we discussed was wage incentive. What's the problem? SMEs are the biggest employer. Large employers are not the employers, and we waste a lot of time chasing them. If you go to SMEs, like what John said earlier, they cannot articulate what they want, and what you produce, they can't assess. So unless we find a solution, and we have launched a product only for SMEs, only to address this problem, we recruit for them. That means I read the job description, I do the assessment, I do everything for him, and finally deliver it to him. He's willing to pay a fee. Please understand, he's willing to pay a fee, but he wants that to be done. So each of these segment, you choose a segment you want to be in. You need to play a long haul. There's no shortcut to this business, and you need to have deep pockets.
Lighter note, don't believe what you read in magazines, because Cafe Coffee Day, if you ask the NSCC training providers, you talk to Ajivika, they won an award for employing the most people from Ajivika. So saying that they don't employ trained people, and as they were quoted in that particular article.
No, it's a premium. They're not willing to pay.
No. Please understand. Yeah, I'm just saying. Please understand. I'm actually making a very important point here. You'll take 3 or 4 cycles, because what happens is a distrust. Because there are many fly-by-night operators who've gone to the same companies and said that we're producing trained people. So if you see the same survey that the World Bank and John talked about, you found that the people who were skilled by a particular training ecosystem, after 6 months, their wage increases was 27 to 30% higher than the other systems. So industry takes a time to actually understand and get okay with this. And that is what Murali is saying. It takes time and it costs time. Who's going to actually enable that to happen? That's the thing.
Yeah, another thing which we did interestingly for our customer, we developed a productivity measurement model, which means that there is a model, what is called total cost of employment. We created a model and showed the employer that they saved money on an annual basis overall, despite paying a higher salary through productivity. So you have to demonstrate, we need to move more work. Let's go to the next question, please. Yeah, thank you. Back to you. All right. Anybody else before I take on this question? Anybody else? Because you got another 10 minutes to go. Okay, sir.
Now this is a typical question not related with NSGC and all the sectors, which Mr. Rao and everybody's facing, at least at the ITI level. In fact, we also adopted 3 ITIs, and what he's gone through now, or whatever his experience is now, we've already experienced it. Just to mention, Mr. Rao, Mr. Bhutange is back in the seat, and he's announced COE back, just to give you information. The point is, if in this type of circumstances which happens, where the government retracts and the state government don't help, like it happened to our ITIs, which we were really passionate about, and we were doing a lot of good work there. Or in this case, like where payment delay is like for 15 days or 15 months or whatever it is. What is the solution about it? Actually, how does a training provider like us, or a company like us also, we have been doing that work like Mr. Rao is doing. How do we go ahead with it? Like today, telling me frankly, entire CI, I've been a part of the CI's Western Skills, this thing subcommittee also. We are just blank what to do.
About payment system? About collecting money?
No, about both ITIs at least. Where I'm saying is both. As in, I'm just saying that when this thing happens, how do we take it as a training provider at one end and one at the corporate level, because we have been acting both ways.
I think I'll just share my views before I ask the other members. But I think what we have been saying in the PPP model is that there must be possibility of negotiating a contract on a case-to-case basis. There can't be one single contract for ITI privatization. The biggest challenge in this country is central government, state government draft a standard policy, and all of us trying to fit into that policy. Right? For example, he said, I want more control on incentivizing my workforce, which are working in the ATI. I want more control on what happens to them in my city. I don't want transfers. So some of the things we'll have to think through, and I think government is not ready for it. Is still giving more flexibility.
I'm just sorry to interrupt you. It's not the point there. The point is that they have made an MOU which is signed by everybody. And you just need to go by the spirit of that agreement. They say no. Like if suppose I'm just getting 20% seat is reserved for IMC, chopdi maar diya, nahi karna. If they say that that we can run any private programs over there to generate income for the institute, no.
Can I come back to you? I think now the ecosystem has changed. If in Maharashtra, right, I think since you're also in Maharashtra, if you can, how many, the people who are running the ITIs in Maharashtra are not, by no means small companies. You have large L&T, Tata Motors, yourself. I think it's time now you got together a group and called on the Chief Minister and said, as a political entity, you want people to be skilled in jobs. This is your ITI system. This is what we have done. These are the 5 things we want from you. These are very critical. The others we can live with. You change it. CI has done the blue book. Everybody has done that. But I think that is one thing. But the challenge that we are facing and why ADB and World Bank and NSDC are looking at different models is that even if we were to increase the capacity in all the 12,500 ITIs by 5 times today, we can't meet the skilling requirements of the country. And the second thing is, both ADB and World Bank have actually talked about this outcome-based approach. I've gone hoarse saying that the outcome-based approach means that you're limiting the amount of skill development in the country. For simple, if the last 2 years we've been able to create 2 million jobs, right? And if you say that we're only going to give money to people who get 70% placement, that means the total training capacity in the country can only be 2.6 million. That means those people who are not in school and not in education, right, are going to be left out. So there are 3 types of people. There are people in school and in college. There are people at work and people out of school and out of college, out of work. 3 PPP models for this have to be different. If the government and if everybody is going to insist on 70% placement, right? And I think you missed Murli's slide that is saying that we won't enter a person into school and college unless he's assured of a job after he goes out there. That means I've gone through school, I've gone through college, I've dropped out of school, I've dropped out of college, I've got no avenue open to me. But just because no one can assure me 70% placement, I'm deprived of going through a skill training program. And this is something which whatever you want to call him, regulator or anybody is thinking through. You are severely you are constraining the number of training, and I'm very surprised because when the apprenticeship bill was being debated with industry, everybody wanted a mandatory placement clause in the apprenticeship bill. If you could not put it in the apprenticeship bill, right, which is much more liable to get you a job, then how can you say that we will only accredit those training providers who have 80% pass rate, 70% placement, and all of that? It can't happen.
That's in almost all PPP, sir. For us, it's 75, it's
70. So that's precisely what I'm saying. That's, we are. You can't because you're being unrealistic. Then we are having professional training organizations. We're having professional job creations. So the government is saying, they're fake employment organizations. You go there, they employ them for 3 months. After that, they chuck them out. So then the whole thing actually turns around. So if the policy is faulty, how can you, this is something which I'll leave both World Bank and ADB to actually think about, because a lot of this is coming from external things. In the World Bank report itself, it says the global best achieved placement record in any country, which is a small country by the way, was 40%. 40. Okay. And here we are coming up with other things.
Sir, but when we don't get the money, the numbers, the point
so
is. We are trying to look for a solution. He has got.
I think the answer is we'll ask the World Bank. We'll ask Basab to answer.
So I'm not going to enter into this debate about placement, but the disbursement link indicators it is up to us what we put as disbursement link. Now, the setting up of training centers, ensuring adherence of courseware to QP and NOS, ensuring affiliation with sector skill councils, assuring assessments are being done with sector skill councils can also become DLIs. So you ensure the fungibility of the PPP models by the DLIs that you place. That's how at least ADB is structuring the DLIs. I'm not saying placement is not one of them because we haven't found an alternate. We can kill this system of saying that placement should not be. Fine, but give us another way. We have to look at some way of ensuring the efficacy of training, because we are all smart people and we all know how to get around systems. Some kind of measures we will have to put in place.
So I think the PMKVY, John.
Yeah, no, I just was going to add to that. And in fact, the point about placement is a very good one. Dilip is in fact right. When you look at a lot of the international experience, especially for core training programs, placement rates, particularly for those who may have dropped out of core schooling, are rarely in excess of 40%. Just to say, this is not, these disbursement linked, as we were just saying, this is not something that we would put into our programs. In fact, we're designing a program right now where we're discussing, less than 50% in terms of what you would put in. So this 70%, I hate to say it, it comes largely from government when they say this is what we think we can place. And we're having that discussion now. But I do, in terms of the DLIs, disbursement linked indicators, the notion is not so much, I think, at least from the perspective of the various banks, is not so much to say, what pressure can we put on a training provider. It's more to say, okay, if we're engaging with government, how can we try to ensure that there are outcomes that result overall? So it's really to say, rather than create more of the same that maybe wasn't so successful in the past, how can we raise the standard? And that's really the kind of point, I think.
I think we're running out of time. I think,
I think we try to address it in the PMKVY system, where the rate is flat, but if you place, you get an added incentive of 475. Now the danger is, what we are seeing there is, they're saying this does not conform to the uniform norms, common norms, so change it. So I think, the problem, I'll tell you, whenever there are meetings with stakeholders, the training providers and the sector skill councils, I'm sorry, Ramesh, you're the lone representative here, are quiet. You can't, you have to articulate your views and go to town about it. Otherwise, you will be hit as non-delivering, non-performing, and the whole ecosystem will get vitiated. You have to be clear. And therefore, if you have to take the ITIs, whether FICCI does it or whether anybody goes, you go and meet the Chief Minister of State, state by state. We are here to help you with your ITIs. But if you put these rings around us, we can't do it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience, and we can have an outside meeting. Thank you.